For some people, an ideal vacation is taking the family to Disney World, going on a cruise ship, or to an all-inclusive resort where everything is taken care of and you don't have to worry about a thing. Others like to lie on a beach for a week to relax. There's little in the way of daily plans, and the only decision to make is what to order for dinner. Personally, I'm the sort of traveler that enjoys always being on the move, with a packed schedule of places to see and things to do. Now, that's not to suggest I'm a fan of whirlwind tours. I much prefer spending more time in a single place to really explore and get to know a city well. But like many American tourists who get only about half as much vacation time as their European counterparts, I suppose I've gotten used to planning trips where I have a relatively short window into which I try to cram as much sightseeing as humanly possible. That was certainly the case when my brother and I embarked last summer with our friends Rosie and Jane on the Mongol Rally, an 18-country road trip across Europe and Asia. While we'd spend more than 7 weeks on the road, that really wasn't a lot of time, considering we were driving basically a quarter of the way around the planet. And if you've ever been in a situation like that, especially if you're moving from place to place, there's this phenomenon you're probably familiar with, where you recall something that seemed like it happened ages ago, but then you realize, wait, that was just yesterday. There was a moment like that in our journey after we had sped across Europe, passed through Turkey, and were now entering Iran that caused Rosie to suddenly see things in perspective. She spoke to me as we were walking down a busy street.
We've gone 2 weeks, and yet we've travelled 3,000 miles. We've met people from the rally, we've met people along the way. We've had so many interesting conversations. I'm really anxious that I don't lose those moments, so I'm going to have to start keeping a diary.
And it's amazing how much you could do in such a short time.
I know, 2 weeks. We've all gone through quite a lot, I think. There's been amazing moments. I think as a foursome, we're sort of learning more and more about each other every day. And I think, that's all part of it, isn't it? It sounds like such a cliche. It's not just a journey in terms of being on the road. It's a journey in terms of ourselves. For example, I've already discovered depths of patience I honestly and truly didn't realise I had. I'm 50-something and, I'm still learning things about myself. So I can't help but think that, others of us who are, 20s, 30s, 40s will go through a similar sort of thing. And I think all of us will be in some way changed on this trip.
I'm Scott Gurian. I'm a longtime public radio and print reporter, and I've always loved traveling and experiencing different cultures. So I've created this podcast called Far From Home to document my adventures. To start off, I'm telling the story of this massive journey my brother and I took with our friends, raising money for charity. We drove nearly 11,000 miles.
11,000?
That's right, a quarter of the way around the Earth, from London to Mongolia, through 18 countries, 8 time zones, 5 mountain ranges, and a few deserts, in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies.
It's not for the faint of heart. It's the adventure, isn't it? It's just the thing of pushing yourself to the absolute limit, because I think it's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
If you're just joining me, I suggest you first go back and listen to all the previous episodes in order to get up to speed and for all of this to make a bit more sense. From language barriers to car trouble, getting horribly lost, to paying bribes to shady traffic cops, it's been quite an amazing experience, and over the coming episodes, I'll be bringing all of you along with me for the ride. If you were to ask me right now to name the most memorable and thought-provoking place I visited on my journey, it would be hard not to answer Iran. A large part of the reason is the mystique surrounding the country that former President Bush once described as part of the so-called axis of evil. Not surprisingly, when we first told people that our trip from London to Mongolia would entail driving across Iran, we got a lot of raised eyebrows. Are Americans allowed there? They asked. How will they treat you? Is it safe? And what about that news footage of angry protesters chanting "Death to America"? We looked into all this, and here's what we found. First of all, it's true that Iran has had a stigma among Americans ever since the two countries broke off diplomatic relations several decades ago. So while millions of foreign tourists flock there annually, the number of American travelers is estimated at less than 2,000 a year. But it's not like Cuba. The American government doesn't mind if you go there, and the Iranians will usually let you in. It's just a bit complicated getting a visa, and you have to hire a tour guide to escort you around the country. As we were preparing for our trip, we heard lots of great things about Iran and its people, with many previous travelers calling it a must-see destination. They described its beautiful landscapes and historic sites. They spoke glowingly of Persian hospitality, and they said Iran was remarkably welcoming and safe. Still, as first-time visitors, it initially seemed a bit challenging to wrap our heads around the myriad rules we were required to follow. I got my first taste of this when we ran into another Mongol rally team at a rest stop in eastern Turkey shortly before we were due to cross into Iran. A guy from Austria named Alex was showing me the stickers on his car from local companies that had made donations for his team's journey.
So who are your other sponsors?
It's peanut butter.
They gave you peanut butter for the trip?
Yeah. It's just 3 jars, but he said afterwards he can give us more.
Okay.
That's pharmacy. She gave us some meds. We have a solar panel.
Oh, wow. Look at that. You got a solar panel on your roof.
Yeah.
It charges your car battery.
Yeah, the second one. We have a second car battery.
Oh, look at that. How cool.
We've got all kinds of gadgets, right? And people charge stuff. We're like a moving charging station.
Yeah.
There were also donations of hats to keep them warm in the mountains and downloadable GPS maps. And there was one other sponsor.
It's a sausage company called Mesna.
What did they give you?
Like salami sticks, smaller ones. And then like gigantic like salami.
Over 20 pounds of salami, to be precise. Now, at this point in our conversation, someone next to us began hosing down his car, so it's a bit hard to hear. But Alex said he'd been sharing the salami with everyone he met, which had sparked all sorts of conversations and led him to make tons of friends along his way. But he still had a lot left, and he just realized he needed to get rid of it quick since he was about to enter a strict Muslim country and it was made of pork.
Are you actually not allowed to bring it into Iran? No. Really? Yeah. So you got to finish it all.
Yeah.
Alex wasn't one to throw away perfectly good salami, though, so he and his teammates ate some for dinner the night before, and then they had more for breakfast. And sure, it was salty, so it made them pretty thirsty, but not to worry, since that actually solved another problem they faced.
We also drank all the beer and all the liquor we had.
Oh, right, because you can't bring the beer and liquor in either.
My brother and I knew we couldn't bring any alcohol, and as non-meat eaters, we certainly didn't have any pork products, so none of this was a concern for us. But we did have to comply with Iran's national dress code, which meant we couldn't wear shorts, even when it was stiflingly hot and we were traveling through the middle of the desert. That was nothing, though, compared to our female friends, who received a memo from our tour company instructing them to show up at the border wearing loose-fitting clothing that covered their wrists and ankles. Most notably, of course, was the requirement that they cover their heads with scarves.
I like that look on you.
Oh, that's so kind. I'm just trying to work out whether we have to drive with them, because how are we going to keep this on with the windows open?
As it turned out, the rules applied whenever any of us were in public, including while we were in the car. But we'd get used to them before long and soon see them as nothing more than a minor discomfort and annoyance. We pulled up to a highly fortified, locked gate at the border. Strangely, we were the only people there. It appeared the guards were on a break, so we sat in our car and waited. "This is so exciting," Rosie kept saying.
Okay, I've never quite been through a border crossing like this.
I know, there's a big gate.
This is a little...
It's very intimidating.
I'm checking Facebook while I can, because I don't know if we'll be able to do that on the other side.
We stared up at a giant photo of the Ayatollah and a sign that said, "Welcome to the Islamic Republic of Iran." But here we were, still technically in Turkey. After maybe 30 or 40 minutes, an English-speaking guy walked up on the Iranian side and introduced himself. His name was Mehdi, and he was our guide. He reached his arm over and shook our hands.
So this is Drew.
Good, how are you?
Scott.
It's good to meet you.
It's very weird.
We're reaching right across the border here through the fence.
So you're going to be travelling with us.
Yeah.
So we're very excited.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice journey.
It is.
Yeah.
It's going to be fantastic.
As we were talking, an Iranian soldier came over and handed Jane a small piece of cake through the fence.
My friends. I will, thank you. That is very, very kind.
Oh, you!
And then, as if by magic, the gate separating the two countries opened.
Oh,
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Here we go. Let's get in our cars and go.
Mehdi helped us translate as we shuffled from desk to desk and building to building, getting our passports stamped, our fingerprints taken, and our car inspected. When we finally finished all the paperwork and continued on our way, I immediately noticed that things felt different from Turkey. I guess I'd describe it as a bit rougher, less Western, and more real. We drove through small towns where the streets were bustling with traffic, past restaurants, auto repair shops, carpet stores, and guys selling watermelons from the backs of pickup trucks. The shops along the main drag were bordered on both sides by large, stunning cliff faces, and some of the buildings were covered with Farsi graffiti. As Mehdi gave directions, my brother attempted to navigate.
So keep going straight? Keep going straight. I don't even know, I'm just going and hoping I don't die.
After driving on Turkey's excellent highways for the past few days, we were totally unprepared for what we'd face in Iran. As it got dark, faded lines meant it was often hard to distinguish the side of the road from the ditch.
There's no lanes.
Unmarked speed bumps appeared out of nowhere, forcing us to slam on the brakes. Aggressive drivers zoomed up behind us, beeping and flashing their brights until we let them pass, and people darted into traffic and drove through red lights.
What is happening?
Basically, there were no rules of the road. It was kind of harrowing, but also kind of like a video game, and it was so ridiculous that it was hard not to laugh. Nerves of steel aside, our other observation as we were driving was that more than anywhere else on our trip so far, we were suddenly being regarded as celebrities. For example, we were heading down the highway when a taxi driver pulled alongside us and rolled down his window to ask where we were from.
USA! Yes!
He nodded his approval.
What did he say?
He just said okay.
Okay.
As if I said something else, he was going to ram me.
Yeah, he was ready for that.
I know.
Lots of people smiled, waved, and honked their horns. And others asked how we liked their country.
We just got here, but yeah, so far.
As I mentioned, we had heard before our trip about how friendly Iranians were, but all this attention still blew us away.
America's perception of Iran is very, different than what we're experiencing right here. And everybody is incredibly welcoming and happy that we're here, and it's cool.
I asked Mehdi more about this a couple of days later as we were walking through City Park in downtown Tehran.
How long do you say you've been leading tours?
Over than 10 years.
And as far as like the number of Americans that you take to Iran, has it increased over time?
Yeah, increased, yeah. From 2 years ago, I was mostly guiding Americans.
Over the past 2 years, it's mostly been Americans?
Americans, I
really?
can say, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
So it's just, like online marketing, just promoted by everybody.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's like better relations between the countries? Things have opened up more now?
Yeah, the relationship actually is getting better between Iran and U.S. and many Americans would like to visit. Probably they didn't know before that they can travel to Iran. In general, actually, everyone, as soon as they arrive here, they feel very safe, very, very friendly people. So they all like to meet people around and just stay here longer.
I should break in here to point out that our conversation, and all the conversations you'll hear, took place last summer when Barack Obama was still president. Iranians had a generally positive view of America at the time, after the U.S. agreed to lift some of its sanctions in return for Iran reducing its nuclear capabilities. I got a sense of how significant this development was when we passed the former U.S. Embassy, where more than 50 hostages were held for over a year beginning in 1979.
So this whole area was the embassy compound, the U.S. Embassy compound? What has this grounds been since it was an embassy?
It's taken by the Iranian army.
The Iranian army took it over, and it was used like as a military base or something?
They have some like exhibitions every year here.
Okay.
It was on a leafy side street, and the embassy's high brick walls were covered with spikes. But what most caught my eye were the wall's colorful murals with Farsi writing.
So what does all this say? There's like billboards, things written all on the walls?
They're just like graffitis, mostly paintings, but they all mean like in subtle way that everything is done by Americans.
That's right, propaganda murals pointing the finger at Western powers as the cause of Iran's problems. And it actually wasn't so subtle.
It was at the U.S. Capitol, the American flag, Israeli flag on top of the U.S. Capitol.
There was also a stars and stripes colored revolver and several images of the Statue of Liberty with a skeleton skull replacing its head. But the majority of the murals were pretty benign-seeming religious quotes from the Quran. Mehdi said it wasn't always this way.
instead of these, actually, before the negotiations, we had lots of bad words about U.S. and Israel. But they're all cleared as soon as we started talking to the West.
So these things we see painted now were just recently painted over?
Yeah, like about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then just they kept one at the end. That's all we saw.
The one that sit down with USA at the end.
Just in case, they kept that one.
So, to recap, the nuclear negotiations started, tensions thawed, and many of the iconic anti-American murals that had long graced the embassy compound's walls suddenly disappeared. Of course, a lot has changed since last summer. Under President Trump, the rhetoric has heated back up, with administration officials now calling Iran the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism and making public statements that Iran is being put on notice. And then there's the visa ban that includes Iran, and which, at the time I'm recording this, is still winding its way through the courts. But Mehdi stressed that from what he's seen, even when tensions have been at their worst, the vast majority of Iranians have simply laughed off the government's over-the-top anti-American propaganda and have instead continued to welcome tourists with open arms. In fact, despite the setbacks in the official relationship in the months since Trump took office, I heard an account from some other Americans who went to Iran just a few weeks ago and who said they received the same warm reception we did everywhere they went. Mehdi said the practice of viewing the world in all its complexity hasn't always been mutual, though.
What do you think are the biggest misperceptions that Americans or Brits or people from other places might have about Iran?
It's a very difficult question. Probably the geography knowledge is just not too much for them.
They just don't know a lot.
They don't know a lot. It's all one country,
right?
And ISIS is ruling everywhere now.
Right.
So that's maybe the perceptions of the Americans or Brits nowadays.
They group it all together with the other countries in the Middle East.
Maybe most of them think that, Middle East is one country and it's Iraq. It's just totally different culture, different language, different people.
And it's a lot safer than Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere. Yeah. I think because of all the perceptions Americans have about Iran, I think they'd be surprised that the reception that we've gotten, like people are so excited when they've seen us on the highway honking horns and everything. Like, why are Iranians so excited to see us? Is it just because we're rare? There's not as many Americans?
When they see actually in reality the American tourists will come as a foreigner to visit the country, it's just very amazing for them to see that. How is that possible? So the Americans come here, enjoy, and just let's be friendly and welcome to them to enjoy more the trip.
Now, to be clear, I don't have any illusions that Iran is a totally free and democratic country, nor do I intend in any way to downplay its long history of violating all sorts of human rights. In fact, many of the countries we travel through in Central Asia, unfortunately, have similarly poor records in that regard. But we didn't go to Iran to argue politics or campaign for change. Rather, as simple as it sounds, we just wanted to meet people face to face, learn from each other, and engage in dialogue. If I had to pick one moment that really stood out to me, it was when we were walking around the grounds of Tehran's historic Golestan Palace, and an enthusiastic guy named Syed approached my brother and me and struck up a conversation.
Do you prefer to speak in English? Yes, okay.
Jane corrected him.
Well, they don't speak English. They speak American.
Oh, yeah, I got the point. Yes, I'll do my best to change my accent in American. Yes, welcome to our country, Iran.
Thank you so much.
I am a teacher in English, and he's my friend. Yes, most of the time we have free time. We come here just to practice our English. And now I'm so happy that you are here and you can help us to make our English better. Okay, is this the first time that you travel to Iran?
Yes.
Okay, after the negotiation between Iran and 5+1, how do you see the relationship between Iran and the United States of America?
Yes. Yeah, tell us,
Tell
us, how do you see that relationship?
I don't like just to ask you, for example, hi, how are you, where are you from? Yes, I'm not a politician, I'm just a teacher, but I want to have better idea to make myself clear about the relationship that we had between United States of America and our country.
I think it's improving, but it's still very much up in the air.
We have a long way for having better...
A long way, yes, very much so. I think the Iran nuclear deal is a start.
Yeah.
But who knows how that will all...
But unfortunately, we have no more progress for that.
The conversation went on like this for a few minutes, and my brother and I, not being experts in foreign policy, kind of stumbled around trying to find something coherent to say. Finally, I decided to fess up.
The thing is, I think the average Iranian here probably knows a lot more because this affects you. And I think in places like back home, like in the United States, like people maybe hear something about it in the news, but they don't know all the details of, people don't follow it as closely. And Iran seems very far away. Obviously, you're following it very closely here in the news, I imagine.
Most of the people in Iran like to have a good relationship with your country.
Of course.
I think it's not the problem of the people, the problem of the government. Same as your government. Yes,
absolutely.
You are so kind, same as the people
and same with
in
all
our
of
country.
you. I think most Americans don't know much about Iran. We only know what we see on the news.
Maybe you have Iranophobia in your country, yes. But when you travel and come to our country, I'm sure you change your idea about it. You need to stay more in Iran to understand us better, especially the people of Iran.
But it's interesting because human nature fears what it does not understand. So people like us are open-minded. Our minds are already open to meeting and talking to people like you. So we are the people who have to go home and change the minds of other people.
It's a great
because
idea.
They're not going to come to you because they're fearful.
Fearful because the idea of traveling to Iran sounds scary to many people in the West. At one point during our trip, my brother and I posted a photo on Facebook of the two of us riding the Tehran subway, and one of our relatives commented that we were quite brave. That's what everyone says, I replied, but once you're here, you realize that the vast majority of people's fears are unfounded. We haven't experienced any hostility or negativity whatsoever since arriving in Iran, and in all my travels around the world, I've never been anywhere where I felt so welcomed, I said. One Friday evening, we were passing over this sort of futuristic double-decker pedestrian bridge connecting two parks in downtown Tehran.
This is so cool.
So much more modern than I would have expected.
There was a gentle breeze, the weather was gorgeous, and it was late in the day, so it was really crowded since everyone had come to watch the sun set over the skyline of the city. As we walked along, random people kept coming up to ask us questions, share their stories, or get permission to pose with us for photos. After chatting for just a few minutes, several even invited us to their homes to meet and have dinner with their families, invitations we unfortunately had to turn down due to our packed schedule. Rosie and Jane met a teenage girl who was studying Shakespeare in school and whose favorite TV show was Desperate Housewives. She and her friends ended up hanging out with us the rest of the night. Meanwhile, my brother and I were approached by a guy named Danielle who spoke perfect English but had never met an American before and had trouble believing that we were honest-to-God, real-life United States citizens there in the flesh. "You're bullshitting me," he said, and asked us to show him our passports before we finally convinced him.
Sorry because of my language, because I was shocked.
Have you never seen Americans?
No.
Really? Really? Oh, okay. No, Americans can come.
I have family there, but I haven't seen them.
Where's your family? Where, in the United States?
New York. Yeah,
in New York? Okay, yeah, we live in New York
as well.
New York.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in New Jersey, but right next to New York.
And I'm in New York.
So you have family in New York, but you've never gotten to visit them there.
No. I just been in contact with one friend from Florida via Facebook, and some chit chat when I was young. Girls in Kentucky and one from Mississippi.
Kentucky, wow. Mississippi, wow.
But no, I haven't been in contact. This is the first time, and I see American.
Really?
A Native American, yeah.
We couldn't stick around to chat since we had to keep up with the rest of the group, but we said he could tag along if he wanted.
So you can walk with us if you want.
I don't know if it's okay if I walk with you.
Yes. You can keep.
Because a friend is just anticipating my.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But it wouldn't be a bad thing, just an American after, like 100 millennials, I'm seeing it for 5 minutes would be just a 5 centuries.
It's right.
It's a legitimate excuse.
We had a wide-ranging discussion about history, culture, and international relations, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I was surprised by his vast knowledge of Western pop culture. Danielle said he was an avid follower of the Humans of New York photo blog. He referenced the British TV show Top Gear, and at one point he even quoted John Lennon.
What do Iranians hear about Americans? Is it negative, positive? Or?
In TV, maybe it's kind of not good. But here, it's variant from city to another. In a city like Tehran and like this metropolis, views are more open, more illuminated. Toward the west, it's okay, but in other kind of cities, which they are
more conservative.
More conservative, of course, right?
Yeah.
They don't like that much view, but America has a great reputation for, respecting the religions and freedoms of views for Jewish people, for Christians, for Muslims, excluding Donald Trump recently.
Exactly, yes. It's really interesting to speak with regular Iranians to hear that point of view.
I have an ordinary life. I just wanted so much to, come to America and visit my family. And of course, I do love to study there, especially medicine or, architecture. And I don't know if I get the chance or not. I don't know. I think people all over the world are the same, and they love, they hate, they marry, they divorce, they die, they born, and things like that. I wish American would come to my country and us going to America and visit each other.
As the first Americans Danielle had ever met, we were representing our country, so it was hard not to feel a little bit of pressure. I mean, we were just engaging in basic human interaction, but here it was in the context of two nations with decades of political tensions. I felt hopeful, though, that our presence had in some small way helped to improve relations and make a difference. Visit farfromhomepodcast.org to see some cool photos and videos from our journey across Iran, courtesy of my brother Drew, who's a really great photographer. You could also sign up for my newsletter to get notified when new shows are released, or search for Far From Home Podcast in Instagram or Twitter. And could you believe it? We actually got through a whole episode this time without experiencing any car trouble. But don't worry if you missed it, because there's more of that next time.
For all of the stuff that we did prep-wise, it doesn't make a damn difference because we took a mechanics class. Right now, we have no idea what's going on.
Also, Rosie and Jane decide to drive ahead of the rest of us, and things don't go so well.
Mehdi says that if they don't get here in the next half hour or so, we may have to, contact the police and have people start looking for them.
Like I do at the end of every episode, I want to give a special shout out to my friends at the Public Radio Exchange for their behind-the-scenes technical help. Go to prx.org if you're looking for more audio to keep your ears educated, entertained, and happy. And if you have a moment, please do me a big favor and go to iTunes and give a rating or write a quick review of this podcast to help other listeners find it. Until next time, thanks for listening.